So if you're watching this video, chances are you want to improve on playing the game, or maybe you're just here to know what I want to say? Well, you could use this video to base on for knowing what to tell newbies, I suppose. But anyways, if you are in need of improvement after all, then were you stuck against the hippo? You think the bear is too much to handle? Or perhaps you're feeling hopeless against the iconic Machu Picchu? I don't actually know why people get stuck on that stage. Well, your first mistake is playing this game in the first place. You pretty much just made contract with the devil, there's no going back. But I'll guide you through hell, don't you worry my children. Anyways, this video is meant for players who are just starting out. Generally for those who are really still in the early parts of the games, namely in Empire of Cats. I will tell you some vital information that you might need to know to make the game easier on yourself. I'll try to keep things simple and compact so that it's easy to understand. Spoilers, I probably will overcomplicate everything and bore you to death 2 minutes in the video. Let's start with the core mechanic of the game. I'm sure the game has told you for the most part about it, but I'll provide a little bit more information. First, you choose what cats you bring with you, then you enter a stage. Entering a stage consumes your energy unless you exit before you spend 10 seconds after entering the battle. Upon entering, you will start with 0 money and level 1 worker by default, and will gain money over time. You can use the money to spawn your units or to upgrade your worker, the latter which increases the maximum capacity of your wallet and increases the money generation rate by a small amount. Leveling up wallet gets more and more pricey every time you level it up, and it is capped at level 8. Spawning a unit will, well, spawn the unit on your base. The unit will automatically do actions by itself once you spawn it, and you cannot control any unit that is on the field whatsoever. By default, it will instantly walk forward by its own, and when it encounters an enemy inside its range of sight, it will stop moving and focus on attacking. The goal is to defeat the enemy base, so technically there might be times where you don't actually have to beat all the enemies to win, as killing their base allows you to win anyways. The same goes to you though. If your base die, all your units die. This is actually kind of horrifying to have your soul bound to a mere building. Anyways, as for the enemies themselves, the enemies have the same behavior. Once it spawns, it will automatically walk towards your base and attack anything on sight. The difference is on how it spawns units. This is what the games doesn't teach you, but I'm sure if you play for a while you'll know about this anyways. Every stage has unique enemy patterns and what we call as stage schematics. I have an entire video regarding stage schematics if you want to learn more about it, which I'll link below, but I'll save you the time. Basically, enemies have 2 types of condition for spawning. Enemies can either 1. Spawn after a certain amount of time has passed after the battle starts, or 2. Spawn after their base health has been lowered to a certain amount. We call the first one timer based and the second one on base hit. There's multiple other things that can affect enemy spawns which I have explained in the stage schematics video, but it's rarely occurring in Empire of Cats, so I'll spare you the details. Just watch the stage schematic video if you want to know yourself. The enemies spawning on base hit are generally stronger than usual, and they expect you to be fully prepared for this. Since they won't spawn unless you hit their base, this means you can take your time with the initial enemies and save up money while avoiding and using cats that are too strong that will push all the way to the base, and rather control your cats so that you won't make the base hit enemy spawn and save up money while doing so. There are a huge variety of enemies out there. Throughout Battle Cats, there has been a huge amount of enemies that has their own strengths and weaknesses, special abilities, special traits, and so on. Even in just Empire of Cats, you get to learn multiple of them. There are your usual peon enemies such as the Doges and Snake, the slightly stronger peons such as Gory and Hippo, red enemies such as BB Bunny, Sir Seal, and then the long range and slow attacking enemies such as Teacher Bear and Laboyne, and so on. The weak peons are usually just there to give you money and absorb damage. They are not much of a threat. The slightly stronger peons requires more power to fight against and can be generally dangerous in number, but gives you more money in defeat and are not actually that strong. The long range enemies generally has extremely strong attacks but is slow, and a stage rarely spawn multiple of them at once in a short interval. They can either be outranged by your high ranged units or is chipped down when not attacking. Like Dark Souls, Battle Cats truly is the Dark Souls of tower defense game. Now moving on to the cat units. There are loads and loads of cat units in the game, but for the first free 9 units you'll be getting are what we call the basic cats. Get to know them and you can easily beat the entire Empire of Cats without even any other units. I'll be giving a brief explanation about all of these and I'll tell you your upgrade priority later. First off, obviously, the basic cat. A simple cheap cat with weak stats but has the lowest cooldown possible in the game. It's meant to say throwaway cat that is generally meant to die and not to do damage. Next is Tank Cat, also cheap, also low cooldown, but it has incredibly high health for what it's worth. However, it has damage so low that it's basically negligible. This combination of high health and low damage works perfectly for stalling enemies for money. And then Axe Cat, a supposed all-rounder, but it is a bit weird. Low cooldown, relatively low cost, but the range and mediocre stats really doesn't make him the best unit around. He's still good for early game though, but we'll talk a bit more about him in a bit. Gross Cat is your first range basic. Very good standing range, which allows him to attack from where enemies cannot hit him and does really strong damage per hit. Cow Cat, a fast unit with decent health but not so decent all-rounder stats. Good for clearing previous stage faster, but it isn't really worth your money as an attacker. It has decent health though. Bird Cat, a short range area attacker with good damage, has relatively low range and low health, but can be powerful when paired with Tank Cat to protect him. Fish Cat is your first true tanker cat. Very good stats against red enemies and has decent stats for what it's worth. Lizard Cat is your second range cat with a higher range than grows. One of, if not the most powerful basic cat. It's basically an upgraded version of Gross Cat. And finally, Titan, a behemoth of a unit that has the strongest all-rounder stats, but is relatively slow, pricey, and has short range. It is very good for tanking out enemies but still needs backup to work well. These Titans won't eat humans, they just like to punch the shit out of things. You can work with just these 9 units throughout the entire empire of cats if you know how to use them properly. Remember that your cats works as a team. They perform better when they are supported with each other, each cat's having their own role. For example, Tank Cat pairs up very well with all the range units, and Tankers works very well against some of the other enemies that doesn't deal too much damage. Now as for upgrading priority, I personally list them like this. Tank, Titan, and Lizard are high priority for upgrading. And on the middle you got Gross, Fish, and Bird Cat, and for low priority there's Cat, Axe, and Cow. Now in the end, I think you should still upgrade them all. They're really cheap to upgrade compared to most other units, but early on you're not gonna have too much XP in the world. Not to mention you also want to upgrade the blue upgrades such as your money production and so on. As for those stuff, I don't really have a list of priority for them, although I will definitely not recommend upgrading base and cannon related upgrades too much. Everything else is much more important, especially the XP upgrade one. If you only focus your XP on these, you won't have much trouble with XP at all unless you spend a lot for gacha units, which I will talk about later. Now as for why this list is like this, well, first off, Tank. Tank is an absolutely amazing unit to have. He's very cheap, spammable, not easily knocked back, and for something with this cooldown and price, his health is really high. He exceeds in stalling enemies while not doing damage to them, having one of the lowest damage output in the game. Overall, just an extremely strong defensive unit to have. Frankly, one of the most important units to have in the game overall. Gross and Lizard are both great for having high range, and Lizard in particular has one of the best all-rounder stats for basic cats. In fact, he is the only basic cat out of the 9 of them that doesn't receive a double stats buff upon reaching true form because his basic stats is that good. Gross Cat can outrange most enemies in Empire of Cats, but it cannot outrange the bear. Lizard, however, can. This makes Lizard a particularly amazing counter for the bears. It can easily destroy the bears in just a few shots. He, however, cannot outrange the elephant. Range is the name of the game. If you outrange an enemy, then you have a massive advantage as long as you have a shield in front of you. Unlike the belief popularized by a crusader, you don't actually need to approach the enemy to beat the shit out of them, so of course Tank Cat can protect them very well as they chill behind and do damage. However, you usually don't really need Gross much once you got Lizard leveled up as they fill very similar roles. So moving on, Fish is a great red tank and damager unit. Might be a little pricey from what you see, but his stats are pretty worth his cost, especially against red enemies. Oh, before I forgot, have you wondered what does strong against mean? If we're talking about calculations, units that are strong against takes half damage from enemies they are strong against and does 50% more damage to them. Meanwhile, resistant takes 1/4 damage and massive damage does 3 times damage. This can be affected by some other aspect, but these are the base multiplication. Anyways, yeah, Fish is great and he's good outside of red enemies too in Empire of Cats. Speaking of tanks, Titan Cat is your true tanker unit. 1 knockback count, high health, high damage, he's got everything. Except for range and speed. He's particularly good for the one enemy that none of your units can outrange, Laboyne, the elephant. A good strategy to use him against Levoin is to bait out the elephant's attack using a weak cat, such as the basic cat or tank cat, as Titan slips into his range and attacks Levoin. This way, Titan would take less hit and survive longer. Titan fills a pretty unique role in EoC and is your best tanker basic cat. He might die fast from swarms of short-range enemies, but he is another range enemy counters aside from Lizard and Gross, which is extremely valuable, hence why I would recommend upgrading him, especially if you have trouble against the elephants. Birdcat has a very good offensive ability. It has the second highest damage output, only beaten by Titan for basic cats. It has low range and mediocre health, but strong area attack that can easily kill multiple weak peons at once. He needs to be protected to work, so he works very well together with Tank Cat. Now for the rest, Cat is self-explanatory. He's a throwaway cat meant to die, not to kill. Not a tank, he's just there to take hits. Generally, there's not much reason to upgrade it, but that doesn't mean he's useless. He's great even at low level. At high level, he might be able to take multiple hits from weaker enemies, which can actually make a difference later on. Axe and Cow, however, they aren't actually bad units for an EoC. Axe has generally decent all-rounder stats for his cost, and Cow is good for clearing up previous stages. Cow doesn't have good damage output but has good health and speed. His damage is actually pretty low, but his speed makes him good for clearing easy stages just for farming. However, the one thing that makes them really not worth upgrading is because you can just direct your XP to instead Ninja Cat. This segues to my next point, which are purchasable special cats. Ninja is the first purchasable special cat that you can unlock, and I would highly recommend to buy and max out Ninja right whenever it is possible. Right, so what are purchasable special cats exactly? I made yet another entire video about them, but I'll talk just about what matters here. You can purchase multiple of them with cat food, and when you're in Empire of Cats, the only purchasable specials that matters are Ninja and Boogie Cat. Everything else doesn't really matter. Why Ninja? Okay, imagine Axe and Cow combined, but better. Ninja compared to Axe has the same cooldown, cost, ability, and range, except he has higher speed, higher damage, and higher health. He's literally just a better Axe. His damage exceeds Cow Cat's while being cheaper, although he has lower speed and lower health. But Ninja is just super good for Empire of Cats. Cheap cats are very much preferable in Empire of Cats, and he's got the package for your one-way trip to brain-dead treasure farming. Axe's third form Dark Cat, however, way outclasses Ninja Cat even if Ninja's at third form. Boogie is just a second basic cat. There's not much to say except that he's a game changer in the final moon in chapter 3, where him stalling the enemy is very important. He also has noticeably higher health than basic cat, which doesn't matter against Bun Bun, but it matters against the peons. Having 3 meat shields is a standard that you'll need to get past most parts of the game once you stepped out of Empire of Cats. His evolved form is probably one of the most colorful thing you'll get for now, but obviously the one place where you can get more cats are from the gacha system. There's 2 main gachas, the silver ticket gacha and the rare gacha. We're mostly just gonna talk about the rare gacha. Gachas are basically gambling. Spend your cat food to get new cats, or occasionally you'll also get golden tickets that allows you to roll the gacha for free. Is this your first time playing a gacha game? Welcome to hell. Except Battle Cats has probably one of the most fair gacha system compared to most other gacha games. Rolling the gacha gives you a chance to get a normal rare, super rare, or uber rare units, or the elusive legend rare unit, which is really just the same as Uber, just more rare. To make it simpler, let's just consider Legend and Ubers the same category, which are Ubers. Do not let this rarity thing fool you. A higher rarity unit does not mean said unit is most definitely better than the units at lower rarity. Battlecats works in a much more unique way where pretty much all non-Uber rare units has their time to shine. In fact, I would say gathering all non-Uber units is much more vital than getting a single Uber rare at all. And these legend rarity units aren't even that significantly stronger than your generic Ubers. I would argue that throughout the entire game, some of your best cats lies in the super rare rarity. Now, what makes these units different aside from how rare they are? Well, the general rule of thumb is like this. Rare units has mediocre stats and generally low range, but low cost and high spam ability with decent abilities. Super rares has longer cooldown, generally mediocre range, just slightly higher price than rares, but better abilities and much stronger stats. While Ubers either has high range or has extremely good abilities or both, while generally having very long cooldown. Now, this is of course not always the case, especially for Ubers, as there are tons and tons of Ubers out there. It's almost impossible to generalize Ubers. So why super rares? Like I said earlier, low cooldown, high stats, and a decent range. This is an extremely good combination, as these units usually can brute force through Empire of Cats with ease. Not all of them of course, not to mention rare units has these units with very strong base stats too. Now it's hard to explain this without going off a tangent and talk for another half an hour, but the short version of what I want to say is pretty much all non-Uber gacha units are great in their own way. But not all of them needs to be upgraded to be great, and not all of them are any good in Empire of Cats even when upgraded. The thing is, most Ubers are very impractical to use in Empire of Cats, and more often than not, spending your XP on Ubers will only be a huge waste. You should focus your XP on cheaper things first instead of spending a huge amount of them for a small amount of levels on your Ubers. Leaving your Ubers at level 1 is a legitimately good strategy. Okay, you know what? Here, I'll just list you the current units for non-Uber units that are worth upgrading in Empire of Cats. Mind you that this doesn't mean everything else that isn't here is bad, they're simply more situational and it's not entirely worth upgrading this early on the game. Now I should also mention that gacha banners rotate every once in a while, and these gacha banners determines what the percentage of getting certain rarities, what Ubers you could get, what special units you might get, but all you need to know is this. This is the words that you will hear from every single person that you ask advice on how to spend your tickets and cat food, and here goes the golden words. Never, ever, ever do singular rolls using cat food. Never do that. Only spend cat food when you have enough to spend an 11 draw. And once you do save enough, only spend these when the banner has guaranteed chance to give you Ubers. As for rare tickets, spend them either in Uberfest or Epic Fest banners, as they are never guaranteed but has higher chance of dropping Ubers. This is how you get the most amount of Ubers. Which guaranteed Uber banners should you roll on? The top 3 I would highly recommend from the most recommended is Ultra Souls, Almighties, and Dark Heroes. The rest ranges from decent to great to risky, but that's a topic from another time. Everyone you ask will say this, and this is true. If you want the most out of getting Ubers, this is the golden rule. Never do single cat food roll, and only use cat food for guaranteeds, and only use tickets for fest banners. However, I will be a little controversial here and give you an advice that I'm sure most people would not agree on, and that is, when you're this early on in the game, spending your cat food on Uberfest or Epic Fest is not a bad idea. I'm sure most of you experienced players will disagree on this. I mean, why would you roll cat food on Uberfest? That's a waste. You're gonna have 100% chance to get an Uber in guaranteed chance, so why gamble it on Fest? Well, yes, it is true that you will be less likely to get an Uber in Fest. However, in Fest, you are slightly more likely to pick up super rares. Certain super rares are immensely broken in early game, and netting a good super rare this early can make your early playthrough so much more bearable. The difference between chance of super rares in normal and fest banners is actually really small, but it can make a difference. You need to get a unit that will carry you throughout the entire game. Another advantage of this is that Fest comes around more often than specific guarantees on an Uber stat that has good Ubers in it. Sometimes you need to wait for eternity for the banner that you want to come around with guarantees, and in that case, you'll be holding onto your cat food forever and will be lacking in common gacha units. Sacrificing your chance on getting Ubers to get common gacha units can save you from getting frustrated from waiting. However, do keep in mind that this comes with the consequence of more likely on not getting an Uber. You still could get Ubers, however, if you truly want to get more Ubers for a long-term sake, then don't do this. You will get a bunch of people telling you that they rolled fast and got Ubers from it, therefore you should roll fast. But don't be tempted if you really want Ubers. Again, it's obvious that you can get Ubers from it, but if getting Ubers is truly what you want, then don't roll on fast. So that is on where to roll the gacha. What about after getting them? Well, there's even more rule of thumbs for this. If it's new, use it. If it looks bad, but it's new, use it. What's that? You got a weak looking rare unit that all your friends say are bad and this is the first time you've seen this unit? Use it. Never ever sell any new units no matter what. You will most likely regret this unless you get the same units a few rolls later. But what if it's not new? Well, there's a few paths. First of all, does the unit benefit from having higher stats, or does their stats even matter? If it does benefit from it, use it. If it doesn't, leave it in the storage. Do not exchange it for XP. Why? Later on in the game, specifically after you've beaten Into the Future Chapter 3, you will unlock another feature that allows you to exchange your units for something else called Nyanko points, or NP for shorts. This NP thing is extremely rare and your units are way better off being exchanged here than being sold to XP. XPs are easily farmable, NPs are not. What do these do? It's another topic, but to make it short, it can alter a unit to make it stronger. It can be pretty game changing too. And what about the things you get from the silver ticket gacha? Use them all. Always use them. There has never been any point where selling anything from the silver ticket gacha is worth, unless you've hit the limit. If you can use it, use it. That's it. Oh my god, this is taking forever. Are you guys even paying attention anymore at this point? Why did I write so much for beginner's guide? Please help me. One more thing about units though. I know this is taking forever, but I gotta give shout out to Boogie Cat, Moneko, and Valkyrie. Bean is a weak unit meant to counter one-horns. Moneko is relatively strong units for her price. She has higher than average health compared to basic cats and strong attack, but very long cooldown. If you're in a stage with not much cash, she's pretty decent, I guess. Other than that though, not much. She's like a free attacker, really. That's about it. Valkyrie is a decently strong range unit and is your only free range area unit. She has the same range as the Gross Cat. She has good damage too, but she's really expensive and has long cooldown. She's also really fast and tends to easily die because she runs off on her own, so use her very wisely. Alright, that's it for units. That took forever, oh my gosh. If you want to learn more about XP upgrading priority, I made yet another separate video for XP. There sure is a lot that you can learn out of a game about silly cats, I know. I didn't really cover on how to get XP early game though. Honestly, if you spend your XP right, you don't really need to farm XP much at all. If you do need XP, just remember that stages with high clear count gives lower XP. Honestly, you get more than enough XP just by progressing normally as well as while you're grinding treasures, unless you're upgrading a lot of gacha units, which, you know, you really don't need to. In Empire of Cats, the same stages or countries in different chapters drops the same amount of XP. So chapter 1 would be easier for you to farm XP on. Farm the latter parts of the chapter for more XP, like from England to Moon. If you need more XP, you could check out the event stages scheduled for XP stages, though they might be a bit too hard for you sometimes. There are XP stages on every day at certain hours that you can check on the schedule, and they're also available all day throughout the weekends. Again, normally you really don't need to if you're just focusing on certain units. Don't spread your XP evenly towards multiple units, that is a bad habit. Now moving on to one of the most important, yet one of the most dreadful part of the game, treasures. This is both the blessing and the curse of this game, mostly the latter. Treasures are a hassle to grind. It's a random chance to drop an item that, if you were to complete the set, gives you a bonus strength for your cats. Here's the thing though, treasures are super important. They make gigantic difference on activation. Not all of them are important though. Some of the most important ones are the ones related to money productions, unit status, as well as production speed. The rest aren't that important, especially the base related or cannon related ones. XP gain is also pretty good. Cannon recharge is probably the best cannon or base related one, and the rest is just meh. Remember, treasures carry over the entire game. they don't just affect the chapters you're in. The attack and health up treasures on 100% completion on each set increases the stats of your units by half of their base stats per set. On a full gold completion in a set, you get what we call a 100% effect. Since there are 3 chapters, getting gold on 3 chapters means you get a 300% effect on the treasures. Since every 100% effect gives you increment of half of the base stats of a unit for both attack and health up treasures, that means on 300%, the attack and health treasures adds up 1.5 of the unit's base health, meaning a unit on full 300% treasure is the same as a unit on no treasure, multiplied by 250% of their stats. This is immensely important and game-changing. Even just the slightest stats change can determine whether your units will just die in one hit from enemies or take multiple hits, or whether your cats need to attack a lot of time to kill an enemy or kill them in one hit. Just know that treasures makes a massive difference in the game, and it will make everything easier or even bearable. Get that gold treasures, you'll be thankful. But of course, you're gonna get easily tired and bored of doing the same stage over and over and over and over again just to get one treasure in the stage. And I think that's completely fine. I'm sure every one of us has been tired of treasure farming. Despite all that, I would like to mention that if you possess a treasure raider item, as tempting as it can be, do not use it to farm treasures here. Raiders are extremely limited item and has usage on much more vital things later on in the game. Keep it. For farming treasures, like I mentioned earlier, Ninja helps. He's cheap, he has good power, and can often clear weaker stages just by spamming him alone, so you can farm treasures as you do something else more interesting, like watching all my videos. Actually, they're not that interesting. Another thing that really helps is Treasure Festival, a certain period of time where treasure drop chance increases by a great amount. This is unlocked once you have beaten chapter 1. There are always Treasure Festival for at least an hour every day in a week. You can check when these happens on the event schedule by checking the Legend Stages menu, and sometimes on certain occasions, festivals might happen all day long. Playing through the stages during treasure festivals really helps in reducing the amount of times you need to play a stage for gold treasure. Keep a lookout for these. Remember that the time schedule that is mentioned on the event schedule are based on your own device's time zone. Yet another thing that are designed to aid the players in getting treasures are Z medals and outbreaks. Except they don't. It's a long explanation on why these outbreaks really doesn't help at all in terms of collecting treasures, and you guessed it, I made an entire video regarding this topic. I know, I made a lot of weirdly specific videos, but point is, outbreaks helps nothing regarding getting treasures even though it is supposed to. So what is actually Outbreak? That might take a while to explain, but the short version is a random event where one of the stage gets infested with zombies and becomes harder. Clearing it gives you a medal. Getting all these medals in an entire treasure set increases the treasure chance for everything in this area. This is horribly balanced and more often than ever, only blocks you off from getting treasures at the first place instead of helping you get treasures. It's pretty much useless for getting treasures. So maybe you're not convinced yet on how strong treasures are. Well, I'm sure some of you watching this are also either stuck on or are worried about the infamous Chapter 3 Moon stage. Well, what if I told you that if you were to collect full health, damage, production speed, and money treasures to 300% effect, you can beat this stage using just the 4 free cats that you have. Utilizing just the basic cat, tank cat, Boogie, and Lizard Cat, you can win this stage with just that and without needing to bring anything else. Of course, bringing other things helps, but these 4 are enough to clear Moon 3. Granted, this is if you have full gold treasures as well as the level 20 production upgrade and level 20 units. If you have less than that, then you can still do it with a better lineup. Gross and Dragon are the main carry for this level. Valkyrie helps too. It is a pain in the ass to collect, but eventually you'll collect them all. It makes all the difference in the world and will help you in your future endeavors in this game once you've stepped out of Empire of Cats and realized that Battle Cats is no mere baby games. Speaking of that, you should keep in mind that Empire of Cats is like the tutorial phase in the game. The whole content of the game lies on events as well as stories of legends. Empire of Cats is simply a filter on whether you're strong enough to keep up with the bullshit that the game's gonna throw at you. Yeah, it's a fun game once you get into it. Anyways, I hope my video helps. That is, if you even have the attention span to watch the video at all. This is my longest script yet, and somehow it is about some of the most basic things in the game. If you want to learn more about things for early games, there's a lot of other videos out there, but frankly I don't trust most of them. Yeah, some of them are pretty poorly made. You could also check out like Regget's beginner guides video. There's a lot of them, but they do touch on some of the more specific subjects that I don't cover too specifically. Most of the things he says I can agree on, although I don't really agree on some of his strategies that includes no gacha, but it gives a good general understanding for multiple things. That's about it really. Well, that's a lot of other things I can talk about, but that would be way too complex to put it in. I think this is it for now. I might add some stuff on like pinned comments if I miss anything important. Be sure to comment if you have any questions, and maybe either me or someone who's not me, who's also experienced, can answer for you. Thanks a lot again for watching. I really don't actually expect you to watch the entire thing from beginning to end, and I hope you learn a thing or two from this video. See you next time, where I once again overanalyze a cartoony cat game.